Welcome to Training in 10 by RU Solutions. In 10 slides or less, we will provide you with an overview of topics related to business, leadership, and human resource issues. Today's topic has to do with communication skills, specifically knowing your audience. Who are they? What do they care about? And how can you best communicate with them? When communicating with a coworker, a customer, or someone else, it's important to understand and know your audience. Are they working on the front line? Are they taking customer calls? Are they in the executive group? Are they a supervisor? Each of these roles are different, and each one has an impact on our ability to support the growth of our customers. Before communicating, think about the basics of audience analysis. Who's in the room? What's important to them? And why should they listen to you? Think about a typical company communication. You're communicating with employees, with managers, and C-levels. You're sending the same message, but each type of audience perceives it from their own perspective and cares about different things. The employee really wants to know, is this good for me? Is it bad for me? Or do I not know? Am I going to have to work overtime because of this change? The manager is looking for information on how it's going to impact the department. Is he going to have to schedule more people? Is he going to have to reduce his workforce? Is there going to be a new software program that's requiring him to retrain people? What are the resources that are going to be needed? And the manager is also the person who connects the dots, links the activity within the department to the broader organizational goals to help her employees understand why a change is being made. And then the C-level, your executives. They aren't worried about the impact on an individual necessarily. They're looking for the organizational impact. Will this support our growth and profitability? What resources at the organizational level are going to be needed? How far and how fast will we go? And what's the return on investment? So ask yourself from the customer's perspective, what are they worried about? What keeps them awake at night? It's also important to think about the level of touch in your communications. The more dialogue that needs to occur, the more face-to-face or phone conferencing that is appropriate. If you need to broadcast your message to a broad audience, perhaps an email or a video or a podcast is appropriate. These types of impersonal communications are good if your intent is to simply inform or update someone. It will help you maintain a relationship by proactively communicating. Conversely, as you move up the scale of higher touch communications, this is important when you're first developing a relationship with someone or when it requires discussion, brainstorming, decisions. At that point, it's more important to interact face-to-face for trust-building activities. So before you communicate, think about the best level of touch. Additional considerations include why you're communicating. If you need to teach someone, an online tutorial may not be the best way. Also think about the person you're communicating with. What level of relationship do you currently have with them, if any? What are the geographical considerations? Are there time zone differences? And if they are, think about not always scheduling the meeting outside of their normal work hours. Are there status or hierarchy considerations? A CEO is probably not going to meet individually with all 750 workers for every instance. And also think about the scope of the audience you need to reach. If it's just a few, perhaps a hallway conversation or a brief face-to-face meeting makes sense. If you need to reach hundreds of employees, you need to think about alternate methods. Now that we've figured out the level of touch that's appropriate, it's time to think about what the receiver of the information cares about. Why are you communicating with them? If you're communicating to inform someone, an executive team, a basic update, a general slide or piece of paper with some bullet points may suffice. If you're having a project team meeting, you probably need to get much more granular with milestones and contingency planning, etc. If your intent is to instruct, the person wants to know what to do, how to do it, and what good looks like. Are they doing it the right way? If your intent is to discuss something with someone, they want to know that. Hey, we're just talking, we're trading ideas. What are the pros, what are the cons? And finally, Sometimes you're going into a meeting to decide. If you're going into a meeting like that, people need to be clear about that is the purpose. Discussion time is over. It's now time to decide. You also need to know that A, B, or C performance may be acceptable in a given situation. Also, finally, keep in mind that not all votes are equal. In most cases, the content expert is going to have a little more sway in the final decision making. One simple tool to help you is called the 6 W's of clear communication. The first W is what. What are you communicating? The second W is who. Who are you communicating with? What is their role? What do they care about? The third W is why. Why are you communicating? This is the most often overlooked, but also the most critical piece of the communication. When you want to open a discussion with someone, you need to share with them why you are communicating. Is it to inform, to instruct, discuss, decide, etc.? The fourth W is when. Think about when to have a communication. If it's an important topic, 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon is probably not the best time. If you want to have a discussion about budgeting with finance, you probably don't want to do that on the last business day of the month. They're busy, they're going to try and close out the books, and the warehouse person is equally busy, trying to get the last shipments out the door. Think about where to communicate with someone. Obviously, you want to do praise in private or public, but criticism or constructive feedback should always be done privately. Depending on the sensitivity of the material and the discussion, you may want to have a room with a closed door. And finally, number 6, what's in it for me? Every time we enter into a conversation, a dialogue, go into a meeting, we all come into it with a certain objective in mind, a certain opinion, and a certain perception of others. Keep in mind that the others also have those perceptions and opinions, and they may or may not be the same as yours. So think about what's in it for me from each person in the room's perspective. Let's build on this what's in it for me idea a little bit more. Sometimes people always don't come out and tell you what's really going on or what's really on their mind, and we need to dig a little deeper. To do that, we can use a concept called the 5 whys. Rather than accepting the surface answer, take the time to dig a little deeper. Consider this issue with the Washington Monument. A few years ago, it needed cleaning twice as often as other monuments. The result? The monument was deteriorating faster. Well, cleaning it more often, you wanted it to look good, that seemed like a good idea. But they needed to dig deeper. They asked, why does it need to be cleaned more often? The answer? The Washington Monument had much more bird poo on it than any other monument. Yes, I said bird poo. There's no nicer way to say it. After that, they said, well, why is there so much bird poo on this monument? Well, more birds are attracted to that monument. Digging deeper, why were there more birds on the Washington Monument? Because there were more spiders. And why were there more spiders? Because there were more insects. Well, why the heck were there more insects on this monument? It turns out it's because it's the monument that is closest to the reflection pond. When it's lit up at night, the insects go to the closest monument. The solution? They simply turned the lights on the Washington Monument on 30 minutes later than the other monuments. Problem solved. Take the time to dig a little deeper so you're sure you know what's going on. Thanks for tuning in to Training in 10. We hope you found it useful. Have a great week.